the end of the day, is the post-workout window dead? We've really just been saying that more protein when you don't have enough and more calories you don't have enough of them is a really great thing. Timing took a big backseat, and that is really important that we found that out, because all this paranoia of making sure to get your post-workout shake, and if you miss by 15 minutes, you're just gonna have no gains, it turns out was almost entirely misplaced. However, there are elements of the post-workout window that still matter. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for RP Strength, and today we're going to try to solve a big mystery. What happened to the workout window as far as nutrition was concerned, especially the post-workout meal? Let me tell you guys a little bit of a story about this. So, back in the day, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, and before that for a number of years, there was this idea about nutrient timing being really important. And we had a couple of studies that showed that when you supplied people with protein and carbs immediately after training, that led to very different results in muscle gain than if you had them just not eat anything after training for a few hours. Very clear comparisons and very basic studies illustrated that you grew more muscle, and every correlate of that, higher levels of muscle growth, lower levels of muscle loss, so higher anabolism, lower catabolism, were evident in the groups of people that had high quality protein and carbs post-workout, and at the same time were compared with people that didn't have that and just drank water, there were very large differences seen. And so what that kicked off with some of John Ivey's work in the book Nutrient Timing in the earlier 2000s was a whole way of thinking about the post-workout meal and the post-workout window as like this really important time to get very precise amounts of proteins, very precise amounts of carbs paired well together. And that was going to make a huge difference. But if you've been in the evidence-based fitness space for a while, or even just perusing videos online, you realize that, well, in the last several years, we haven't heard much about the workout window. And if you look at some of the great work done by folks like Eric Helms, folks like Brad Schoenfeld, a really standout work from an explanatory and published empirical perspective by Alan Aragon, who's amazing and you should be following already, really pointed out something that these basic comparison studies were missing. And it's this. First thing they pointed out was, yes, protein and carbs together have a certain synergy, but that synergy mostly affects protein breakdown and not protein accretion. So if you have carbs with your protein after a workout, it lowers the amount of excess protein breakdown is already occurring from that workout, but it doesn't raise net growth a ton, just a little bit. Just consuming more protein can basically give you 90 or 95% of that anabolic benefit, and carbs don't need to be involved. So all of a sudden that broke our paradigm a little bit, because we're like, okay, we thought it was protein and carbs. Turns out the carbs aren't as big of a deal as long as the calories are there. And as long as there's high protein, we're good to go. So that was an interesting revelation. Another one was this. It looks like some of those studies that were being done thought they were manipulating one variable, and really they were manipulating two, which means cause and effect can no longer be established. The one variable they thought they were manipulating was, are people eating protein and carbs, a nice meal, in the post-workout window versus not? But the variable they were manipulating in addition to that was the variable of total daily protein intake. The vast majority of folks from those earlier studies, without a post-workout shake, they were consuming 120 grams of protein per day, for example. And many really were consuming roughly that much. With a 40-gram post-workout shake, protein, and 60-gram carbs, those people were now consuming 160 versus 120 grams of protein per day, and got an increase in calories, so they were now in a slight surplus because of those carbohydrates and the proteins contributing to calories. So in reality, we're comparing not just protein timing in those studies, but overall protein and calorie intakes through the day. When we started making studies and conducting studies that looked at protein timing with total daily protein being equal between groups and total daily calories, we noticed that all but about 5% of the difference between timing or protein one way versus another, between eating protein in the post-workout window versus some other time of the day, only about 5% of that difference remained. And then it looks like those earlier studies that were showing us the post-workout window is this huge deal and it's causing tons of muscle growth were really just showing that an extra 40 grams of protein per day when you don't eat enough protein can make an enormous difference. And that, combined with the other literature we've seen on protein intakes really mattering over the course of a day, kind of was like, oh man, we've really just been saying that more protein when you don't have enough and more calories when you don't have enough of them is a really great thing. Timing took a big backseat. And that is really important that we found that out, because all this paranoia of making sure to get your post-workout shake, and if you miss by 15 minutes, you're just going to have no gains, it turns out was almost entirely misplaced. And that if you manage to get enough carbohydrate, protein, and calories through the whole day of eating, how you split that up just doesn't matter nearly as much. And you're going to be good to go as long as you have enough protein, which is super big, which is why the kind of modern consensus is that if you hit your total daily protein intake and you distribute it relatively evenly through 3 to 6 meals, roughly evenly spaced, with roughly the same amount of protein in each meal per day, that as long as your calories are good and your carbs are good, man, you're just doing most of the work there to power your workouts and to get all the hypertrophic stimulus from them that you need, and then you're good to go. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind. However, there are elements of the post-workout window that still matter. If you look at all of the literature taken together and all of the theoretical constraints, you find out a few things. One is that while overall protein and calories matter, missing multiple hours in that post-workout window can still cost you a few gains. Missing multiple hours of not having enough carbohydrate and enough protein coming in. So it's one of these things where it might be a 5% difference, but think about how 5% can reflect itself over years of either missing it or of getting it. After several years, it's a legit muscle gain that you're missing out on if you always work out and you skip 2 to 3 hours of eating anything after, and then finally when you feel like it, you get some food in you. That could be costing you 5% of gains. Here's the thing. In a 12-week comparison study, often you can't even detect 5% gains. Only the most intricate studies can detect things like that. But 12 weeks can't be extrapolated to a year for sure, or definitely a lifetime of training. So on theoretical grounds and direct experimental grounds, we're fairly certain that you should be getting a good bolus of protein and a probably good bolus of carbs. That is more optional, but for sure protein and calories within 3 hours of having stopped your actual workout for hypertrophy. One of the big reasons is that your hypertrophy is stimulated by direct detection of muscle tension and possibly some other factors, the actual working out. And that grows you muscle for days afterwards. But the mTOR complex, the central regulator of muscle growth in your muscle cells, is also independently and synergistically stimulated by amino acid availability, which means protein that you have to eat. And there is absolutely a sensitive period of stimulation that lasts generously about 6 hours after workouts, but the first 3, your body's the most sensitive to it. Is it night and day? No. Is it live or die? No. Does it matter? Yes, it probably matters. In addition to that, the mTOR complex has an insulin-independent mechanism by which high levels of insulin caused by high increases in carbohydrates also stimulate that complex, probably not resulting in overall net growth, not resulting in increase in synthesis of protein, but almost certainly resulting in a reduction of protein breakdown. And so what you end up getting from this whole situation is if you consume lots of protein within that 3 hours after working out, plenty of carbohydrates, and obviously that combines to lots of calories, you get a slight increase in muscle protein synthesis, a slight decrease in muscle protein breakdown, and that over many, many workouts, many, many days of training, and many weeks and even months of training, the difference is going to start to become notable. But here's another reason why workout window nutrition is a good thing to pay attention to. Actually, 2 more reasons. So the first reason is that it does work on the margins over time. The second reason is that as you become more advanced and muscle gains become sparser and sparser, things that just didn't matter much start to matter a lot. For example, if you have a rickety biplane from World War II and you have a bolt sticking out of it 1 extra inch, how much drag does that bolt have on an airframe that goes 120 miles an hour as a max speed? I mean, gee whiz, you can't even measure it. Who cares? So if someone's like, hey, before you take off in your regular biplane from World War I, just make sure all the bolts are sticking in. Like, well, is it coming apart? No, but just for the drag, you would be like, that's crazy, for sure. But if you're flying the SR-71 Blackbird, America's best spy plane from back in the day that goes Mach 3, 3 times faster than the speed of sound, one bolt protruding can throw off airframe dynamics completely and literally kill you when you get to Mach 3 by ripping the wing off behind it. It's a non-starter. Just the same way, or much the same way, when you're in your first few years of training, dude, just eat food and lift weights and you're going to be golden. You're going to be getting great gains. After you train as an intermediate for a while, you'll notice that just eat food is not causing amazing gains anymore. And for the gains to still be amazing relative to your advanced age of training, now that has to be a situation where you're like, okay, I'm going to eat 4 times a day, not just twice like I usually do. I'm going to have high quality protein in each meal. I'm going to make sure to get a really good amount of sleep. Then that keeps the boxes checked. When you become advanced, training consistently for more than 7 years, even things like nutrient timing can start to make the difference between not amazing gains and okay gains. At that point, nutrient timing can make the difference between you're making gains versus you're basically not making gains at all. Because at that point, 5%, that's all you're growing anyway. And it could come entirely from the fact of, do you have a post-workout meal within 3 to 6 hours of training, or do you not? And that feeds into my last point about why the workout window still matters in 2025, 2026. And here's why. It's just so easy to check off. If someone told you, hey, this thing you can do is going to increase your bank account by 5% per year, you go, okay, what's the catch? Like, no catch. Like, well, how hard is it? We just need to sign on this dotted line and the bank does some kind of trading with your money. It's guaranteed we won't spend all your money, but you get 5% back. You're like, you check with ChatGPT, you check with your accountant. They're like, no, this is ethical. It's done all the time. There's no catch. You're like, so what's my cost? Like, just sign the dotted line. You're like, okay. For 5% more money. Like, okay, why wouldn't you do it? Just the same way. If you have an opportunity post-workout, you don't even need to bring your shake with you to the gym. Holy shit. You can. I do, for that extra bit of insanity. If you just stop by the gas station on the way, grab yourself a Muscle Milk and a Pop-Tart, or you go home and you make yourself a whey shake and you have 2 bananas with it, and that happens within several hours of your lifting, you can get a free several % growth just from that. I've said free. It's not free. It requires the effort to eat a meal within 3 hours of training. Guys, here's the thing. If you're going to eat at any point of the day, you're going to have 2 points of the day that are really important. Eating at some point before your workout if you don't have morning energy, to give yourself energy to train. And the other one is the single most important meal of the day really is the post-workout meal. And just because it's not a big deal, we can say, okay, this isn't life or death. And it's not. But if it's so goddamn easy to eat a meal within 3 hours of your workout finishing, you might as well do it. It's also shown that if you have intra-workout nutrition, the importance of the post-workout window shrinks because you're still feeding and that food is still getting to where it needs to be. So you can even have a shake of protein and of carbohydrates and of enough hydration and enough electrolytes. What I do is I use Genius Shot. I use Gatorade for my regular carbs. So Genius Shot for protein, Gatorade for carbs, and I use half an Element packet in order to get my electrolytes. I measure out the fluid, so it's basically 1 liter of fluid. That is my go shake. It powers my workouts towards the end, and it begins to replenish my body, so it functions as an intra and post-workout shake at the same time. It's just not hard for me to make a shake like that. And just on the way home from the gym, if you catch a protein cookie and a banana or something at the gas station, having it be that easy to check off that 5% box is, to me, what makes the difference and why it makes sense discussing the workout window, because something happened For some people, when we reach the modern consensus of the workout window is not that important, it went for those people from not that important to literally doesn't matter. There is a big difference between those two things. It's subtle, but it's a huge difference. The workout window not mattering at all is not true. It does matter. But if you're worried about, oh my God, it takes 7 minutes to drive to this gas station to get my post-workout shake. It takes 10 minutes to drive to this other one. I better do 7 because 3 minutes, that's it. I'm going to lose all my muscle. That's nonsense. That's what has been refuted. But whether or not to eat any protein and carbs within 3 hours of your training afterwards, if it's a serious hypertrophy session, that will make a difference. It's not a huge difference, it's 5%. But listen, if you don't want 5%, you can stop all your sets 4 reps shy of failure. You can do half the volume you planned on doing, and all this other stuff that's all little 5% starts to go off into the wind. 5 percentage points adds up. And if it's just not that hard to get a post-workout meal in, then you can just do it. Let me give you guys some real world guidelines on how much protein needs to come from this and how much carbohydrate and what some of the sources are. So generally speaking, it really depends on body size, but small folks can do with about 20 grams of high quality protein. That means milk or egg or meat based, lots of leucine in there. That's the start. Coupled with anywhere between 20 and 40 grams of carbohydrate is usually an awesome post-workout meal. And then 3 hours later, you can just have your normal meal like you were going to have it. If you're larger, it can be as much as 60 grams of high-quality protein paired with as much as 100 or 120 grams of carbohydrate from any kind of source that you like. Lower fats to get the proteins and carbs into your bloodstream quick. Fats slow down digestion. Those are the extremes. Anything between those, so that's 20, 40, 60 for protein, depending on how big you are. It's 20, 50, and 100 for grams of carbs, depending on how big you are. And the carbs aren't even that important, but might as well give you some good numbers. Those are kind of the general ranges of the intakes that you're looking for to consume. Lower fats doesn't mean zero fats. It just means no extra gobs of butter or cheese or olive oil or something like that. And to that point, let me give you guys some suggestions of just normal foods you can eat within 3 hours of stopping your weights workout for hypertrophy, for muscle growth, that are just awesome examples, awesome ideas. This is not all of them. You can just take this anywhere you want. Here's one. You have a Rice Krispie treat with a banana and a shake of whey protein. Boom, easy. It takes 5 minutes to consume, no problem. You can eat that shit in the car on your way back. A classic bodybuilding meal, chicken, white rice, and some fruit. Just chicken and white rice is great. With some fruit, it makes it even better. Amazing. No problem. You can have, if you're fancy, a Greek yogurt, Scott, a Greek yogurt parfait. Darling.
I didn't know you spoke French.
Oh, do I? I was in the academy. Yes. So get yourself some Greek yogurt, throw some fruits in there, some honey, some granola, and all of a sudden you got protein, you got carbs, you got a little bit of fats. It's awesome. If you really want that leucine spike, that extra amino acid that makes you grow more, yogurt typically has enough of it, but you can have some whey in addition to that and really assuage your concerns. Of course, classic lean beef plus baked potato, little lean beef patty, never hurt anybody. That's totally cool. Super simple, super straightforward, can be found at most restaurants, can be made at home very easily. And if you're really in a rush, low fat chocolate milk with a bagel, man, if you really just need some protein and carbs, it's not exact, it's not super specific, it's really going to work a super, super great amount. So at the end of the day, is the post-workout window dead? No. Is it the most important thing in the world to get instant nutrients as soon as you stop that last dumbbell set hits the ground? Do you just need to be IVing amino acids and carbs? Absolutely not. If your only post-workout intake is just protein, you're really doing well for yourself. But if it's protein at a higher dose and carbs of any kind with relatively lower fats, and it happens within 3 hours of your workout, you are doing a super straightforward, really easy thing that if you make habit, gets you an extra 5% or so of muscle growth year on year on year. If you're into that sort of thing, it's going to pay off with minimal investment. If you want better gains and you're not doing this yet, here's an easy option. And if you're just eating enough protein throughout the day and you don't want to bother with the workout window, you don't need to bother with it at all. But when you want that next level of gains, the specifics start to matter, and just a little bit of tending to that workout window might be a good thing. Think about that. And if you have the RP Diet Coach app, well, shit, it can program a post-workout meal for you. You don't have to second guess anymore. Link in the description for that. Folks, let me know what you think about this. If you want more sciencey, in-depth goodness, I feel like I had a huge script here with all kinds of science in it, but I figured I'd give you guys more of a low-key, real deal that's practically useful. If you want to get into crazy science, well, here we got a lot more videos on that just coming up. And I'll see you guys next time for all those.